Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me here in New Vegas, just at Jean's skydiving here, which is near Prim. And we're gonna walk and talk while we talk about episode 7. So, quite a few things that have happened, and we open in a very interesting spot because we get some backstory about Steph. Confirms what I suspected about her, that she's definitely the stabby, murdery type of woman, which is fair enough. So she basically stabbed her way across the border from Canada after escaping an internment camp, and from what we see when her mother is injured and dies, she clearly took her mother's last words to heart and then some, and there's an interesting little bit of misdirection when she gets to the border where it kind of makes you think that maybe the border agent's looking for her to convince him to look the other way, but no, she just decides to stab him and then march across the border. So, you know what, more power to her, why not? Oh, there's some red on the map here. That's angry dogs. That's okay. That's okay. The dogs aren't really a concern, but there's some more dangerous things further up this road. But yeah, so quite an interesting one, and you know, we knew from previous episodes that Steph is actually Canadian, so it's going to be interesting to see just what pans out with her, finding out what she's up to. And then we cut back to Lucy, and it feels like she's maybe starting to give her father the benefit of the doubt, but she's still kind of stating that what he's doing is wrong, and she's concerned about it, which I think is fair and reasonable. Because sure, it's creating peace, but is it really a good thing if you're taking away everybody's free will? I'm not convinced. So there's Snuffles, the mole rats. This is Sloan, which is a little kind of quarry town, but they can't work anymore because there's been a bit of a invasion of Deathclaws. But that's Snuffles the mole rat, so yeah, interesting. You know, is taking away everybody's free will really the best way to achieve world peace? I don't think so. And it's very creepy, you know, because these people, they're all cheerful, but it's still very robotic, and you know, the kind of control boxes on them. And then, you know, we have this whole thing where it's a very normal kind of father-daughter thing that, you know, he's teaching her to drive, which is very much a normal kind of parent thing to do. A lot of people do teach their kids how to drive. I mean, sure, it's a golf cart, not a car, but same vibe, really. Oh, we get a bit of a dust storm happening here. And, you know, it's kind of weird. I mean, a lot of these kinds of vehicles do drive fairly similarly to cars anyway, and I say this as someone that did learn how to drive a tractor when I was doing work experience on a farm. But you know, that's a parent thing. You teach your kids how to walk and talk, teach them to ride a bike, you teach them to drive their car when they're old enough to do so, all that kind of thing. So fairly kind of normal parental stuff. But we've got this creepy, like, stuff happening in the background that gives it a really weird context that he's, you know, just acting like a normal dad, except he's also, you know, got all these people under his control and things. It's all very weird and creepy. So this is Quarry Junction, where a bunch of Deathclaws live. There's a whole family of them. There's even some baby ones roaming around usually when you come here. But yeah, I love Thaddeus. I know he's basically taking the role of the comic relief character, which I think suits him really quite well. You know, he's got that. You know, he's so awkward, and he's trying to be all friendly and stuff. It makes me laugh. He's obviously trying to find some common ground with the ghoul, who is just absolutely not interested in having anything to do with this guy, which I quite enjoy. It's quite funny. But yeah, this place is... there's the babies. There's the babies. I say there's a whole family, there's loads of them here, including, if I remember rightly, yep, so we've got Deathclaw babies, look at them, they don't have the horns yet, and then there's the matriarch, the mother, so she is, well, very dangerous, but the baby ones are kind of cute in a terrifying way. Yeah, I don't know. I think... yeah, look at the claws on that thing. I'm not entirely sure where this NCR camp is, which one it's supposed to be, but clearly the NCR is not patrolling the Mojave anymore, wishing for nuclear winters. So we're gearing up to tackle the Deathclaws on the strip, which it seems to be came from here, so Quarry Junction is to... almost directly south of the strip, so the strip's up here. And for some reason the Deathclaws have kind of made their way up there, possibly from here. So yeah, we've got the mother, the matriarch. There's also an alpha male one kicking about somewhere here. A bunch of normal Deathclaws. I think that's him actually. Oh, it's too far away. Is that him? Yeah. So, you know, whole family unit here, which is lovely. But that is the one thing I want to talk about is the ghoul, his smirk when Maximus says he wants to give the cold fusion diode to a good person, to Lucy, because he thinks she'll do the right thing with it. That smirk is very interesting. And remember that the scenes that we're seeing in the present with the ghoul are increasingly related to things that have happened in the past, in the flashbacks. And then we do go into a flashback at the Lucky 38, and it seems that our friend Steph is working there. She is working as a maid in the Lucky 38, and she comes to collect Hank's unconscious body to take back to his room in a laundry cart, which is hysterical. It's really funny that he's just been dumped in this big laundry cart. But she's asking about, you know, how to get into a vault or how to get a job for Vault Tech. And we know that she obviously does manage to get a job with Vault Tech, and that's how she ends up in Vault 31 and then becomes overseer of Vault 32 after living in Vault 33. So, you know, obviously she's managed to do something there. And then Cooper has a meeting with Diane Welch, the congresswoman that we've seen previously. And when she first appeared, I thought maybe she's just a one-off character, but no, she seems to be a recurring character in this, that she's more involved than I first thought, which is interesting. But I note the good person there as well, though, so the fact that Cooper Howard says, I think you're a good person, you know, that's kind of an interesting connection. So if we look back at the smirk that he gave to Maximus, it really feels like a, oh, you sweet summer child kind of moment there. He's like, yeah, I remember when I was that idealistic and thought people I met were good. You know, it's given that kind of impression. And Diane here, she has some inside info on Vault Tech. She clearly knows something about the company, which makes sense. She's a congresswoman, she's involved in the government and all the rest of it, and Vault Tech came about, it was a government contract for preparing for the end of the world. So it all kind of ties up together and makes a lot of sense to me that she would be, you know, have some more knowledge than the public would, particularly about, some dead Deathclaws here, and a dead powder ganger. You're just a young one. Don't know if it was me that did that or somebody else, but oh yeah, there's a warning there. So yeah, kind of interesting that, you know, she's involved, and she says that if it was up to her, she would make this infinite power, infinite energy public, so that everyone could have access to it. And she's not wrong that technology, if made available to everybody, that, you know, everybody could get all the electricity they wanted, it would put an end to the resource wars, which on paper sounds like a good thing, but Vault Tech don't want that. You know, that's the thing. It's kind of flies in the face of their entire business plan, really, is, you know, they kind of rely on the war to be worthwhile for their entire business. It's, they wouldn't want anyone else to have it because they've invested so much time and so much money and everything into the vaults, into creating these vaults and all the experimentation and getting the government contract. So if someone was to come along and make free infinite power available to everybody so that the resource wars would stop, that Vault Tech would end up, they would either have to massively change direction in terms of what they do, or they would have to go under. Vault Tech can't thrive as a corporation if the end of the world isn't going to happen. So, it is something, and that connects to the bit where Barb Heard says, when Mr. House or fake Mr. House says, how can you guarantee results? And she says, by dropping the bomb ourselves. That's got to be why, because they had to have everybody, the investors, convinced that this was going to happen one way or another. So the only way for them to look after their own interests was to, invest in Vault Tech and ensure that it happens as it's supposed to, or at least as they want it to. So it's all kind of coming together, and it absolutely kind of fits in with what we would expect to see with Vault Tech. So that'd be why they really didn't want anybody else getting this technology. And then obviously Barb had the idea of, Mr. House wanted it, and he wanted it for himself. He wasn't going to share that with everybody either. So it's very, very interesting to see where this is going to end up going. But Diane agrees to get a meeting set up between Cooper, Howard, and the president of the US, who is in Vegas at this time for some reason. It was an unmarked plane that landed at McCarran, so he's obviously not using the Air Force One, whatever, to get around, which kind of suggests that, he's not here for an official reason that he wants the public to know about. It's obviously something that's supposed to be kept on the down low, which is interesting. And we don't really know if this president can be trusted, because let's face it, out of all the presidents in US history, not all of them are good people. And we don't really know much about the president that was in office just before the bombs fell. We know that he kind of disappeared or went missing shortly before the bombs fell. People were asking questions because he hadn't been seen in public. Nobody knew where he was. But we also know that the origin of the Enclave came out of the US government, or what survived of the US government after the bombs fell. So it kind of makes sense that the president was probably going to be doing something not so good with the here's a death claw nest. I don't think we can get any further in here. Hopefully I can get back out, actually. There we go, got back out. Good. There's a lot of death claws hanging around in this area. This is why you have to go the long way around to Vegas unless you are feeling especially brave and skilled with your weapons, because you're contending with quite a lot of death claws en route. It's just part of a house that's falling apart, isn't it? So yeah, interesting. And we know how the Enclave came about, and if the question is the president going to use this technology for the benefit of everybody? And if not, what does he intend to do with it? And it does kind of feel like Cooper is trusting all the wrong people again. And I feel like this is a hard lesson that he's going to be learning, depending on what happens next. But if it was given to the president, which we know later in the episode is what happens, that would explain how the Enclave came to be in possession of this piece of technology, because Cooper basically stole it from Vault Tech and gave it to the president, which is interesting. So yeah, we come back to the present, and I kind of love how the girl just sighs whenever Thaddeus speaks to him and just doesn't answer him at all. It's just like, God's sake, this guy. It's I find it quite funny. But yeah, it's when he says, that if you want to help Lucy, you're going to have to give it to a very bad person. And when he says very bad person, he's talking about himself. It's very much something that he believes about himself as being a bad person. And, can't deny that he has done some horrible things in his time, and he's been jaded by 200 years of wasteland nonsense and decades of war, political nonsense, and a complicated personal life before that. So, and he's ended up back where he started, where he's got his hands on this amazing piece of technology, and he's going to have to decide what he's going to do with it. So it's very interesting, and he says, yeah, go back, talking about going back to where you started from, and this is what's happening with Maximus as well. So he's getting this new suit of power armour. It's an NCR one, so it is kind of merging his origin, both that he was born and brought up in NCR and Shady Sands, and then ended up in the Brotherhood of Steel. So this NCR branded suit of power armour with the Ranger helmet is a kind of amalgamation of both of these things, and he's kind of combining that identity almost in order to tackle the next challenge. And thankfully, Norma's alive, mostly. Poor guy, he's not having a good time up here, but he wakes up to them debating about what to do with him and whether to kill him or not. And apparently the impersonation of management is punishable by death according to the Vault-Tec handbook, because of course it is. Sounds right. Vault-Tec being Vault-Tec. Over at Violet's camp is one of the fiends who really likes our dogs, like really, really likes our dogs. But yeah, interesting. And then we end up, jumping into the other vault. So we see Chet, and he's trying to have a conversation with Steph about the upcoming wedding that she'd never bothered to tell him about. And I really do feel for this guy. He's also not having a good time, but he is going to have to sort of learn to stand up for himself a bit, I think, going forward, if he wants to actually kind of get his life back on track. But he finds a pair of glasses blocking up the garbage disposal. Now, I kind of understand what those things are. It's not something that's very common at all here in the UK, but I understand kind of it's a thing for like food waste, and it grinds it all up. So it's like a blender that drains into the kind of sewer system or something. That's my understanding of what these things are. Presumably in the vault they maybe use it towards like composting to make fertiliser or something. Not entirely sure, but it's clearly a thing. And I know that these things are quite commonplace in the States, but he's found a pair of glasses, and then he asks, have you seen Woody? So it definitely seems like these are Woody's glasses. And apparently Woody is on a leadership programme in 31, which is what Betty said happened to Norm. I think Woody might be dead. I really do. I'm kind of worried. I don't know what Steph has done to him. He's either dead or he's locked up somewhere because he overheard the whole conversation with Betty. So a little bit concerned about Woody as well, that he is no longer with us, but we'll have to see what happens. And then we get to 33, where the water situation has got so bad that showering and flushing the toilet is now illegal, which is lovely. I'm sure Vault 33 is smelling wonderful because of that. But clearly the water situation is getting out of hand, so Betty she's come to a decision. She needs to do what Steph wants so that they can get a share of Vault 32's water, which shouldn't really be an issue because they split 33 and sent some people to 32, so it's still overall the same number of people, less the McLeans who have all left. So, from that point of view, it shouldn't really be an issue. But anyway, so she goes and gets this keepsake box of Hank's and takes it to Steph. I want to know what's in it, but we're not finding that out just yet. I'm sure we will at some point find out exactly what's in the box, but I don't really know what it is. I'm really curious about it. It was quite fun to see that they've made a real life print of the Napoleon painting with Todd Howard's face, and that's where the safe is behind that painting. But Also, just a comment about when Betty said that they were all scared of Steph, presumably while they were working together.
Was nothing.
That smile of hers was just very, very creepy, very chilling. I really like it. The actress is really, really good that plays her. So really looking forward to seeing exactly what she's gonna do next. Oh, there's look at there, right there. So yeah, very interesting so far. And then when we're walking through Freeside, everybody's really excited to see the NCR back, which is interesting because at this point in the game, the NCR aren't that popular in Freeside, and there is a bunch of NCR citizens living there, but they're at odds with the Kings and the locals. Because the NCR, they're handing out supplies, but only to NCR citizens, and there's a whole argument about how everything should be shared equally and all that kind of stuff. So it does seem like the NCR have become more popular in that area in the interim between then and when the TV show takes place. So, you know, they seem quite encouraged and they think, yeah, they're going to go and clear out all the death claws. But again, I said this before, I think I really do love what they did with the wardrobe in Freeside for the people that are wandering about. You know, the fact that they look like they've all gone and raided the casinos for outfits and taken clothes from the costume departments and stuff. You know, some of the women are dressed like showgirls and stuff. Really, really like it. It gives the place a different feel from, you know, giving Freeside a bit more of a visual identity separate from like when we were in the Legion camp, and obviously the Legion have quite a classic look that we know of from the game, where they've taken a bunch of sports equipment and dressed it up to look like Romans and all that kind of stuff. And I think having given Freeside that visual identity as well is really, really good, and it kind of shows us, you know, this is where you are. You can tell that's where you are even before you see any of the landmarks and things, which I think is really, really well done. I mean, the set design and the costumes and everything are absolutely top notch for this show. Really, really, really good. The bit where Thaddeus's arm falls off is hilarious. You know, he's like, yeah, I'm just having a slight medical episode. And it does kind of confirm that he's not a normal ghoul, Thaddeus, because, you know, the serum that he was given was supposed to fix his leg falling off, or well, his foot. But now his arm just falls off randomly. That's kind of a weird thing. I mean, the ghouls are squishier and easier to dismember than normal humans, but they don't typically have limbs just falling off at random like that, so I don't really know what's going on with them there. But I think that was obviously put in there just for a wee bit of comic relief, which is fine. You know, here for that. I feel like a bit of comic relief. And Thaddeus is hilarious. But then we switch back to Lucy, and she's now changed into the yellow dress that we saw before in her bedroom. And she's still wearing her boots though, which I think is kind of interesting.
Hey.
Hi, random child. Because there's an incongruity with, you know, that pretty yellow dress, obviously very 50s style with a kind of circle skirt almost, and then these like hiking boots essentially. It's not the kind of thing a woman normally wouldn't wear a dress that nice. She would probably have heels on or like nice shoes, not these big hiking boots kind of things. So there's an incongruity there in her outfit, you know, that just doesn't look quite.
We're not even allowed to sell, people.
Right, and I think that highlights something that Lucy is now. She's not quite sure where she fits into in the world now. You know, her dad's trying to make her into his apprentice, essentially, I think is what he's trying to do, while she's, you know, she still thinks that what he's doing is wrong, but she's starting to doubt herself and things. So it's really highlighting this, that she's kind of trying to make up her mind and she's not sure exactly what the right thing to do is anymore. So it's kind of highlighting that, which I think is really well done. And then she has this conversation with Hank about where he says, you know, the NCR are just as bad as the Legion because taxes. Um, and he says you'll understand when you're older. So he's doing that. He's infantilizing her again. He's treating her like a child, and she's not a child anymore. She's an adult. She's been out. She's seen the world. She's talked to people that have been living on the surface. She's got a bit more worldly experience under her belt. And he's just like, no, you'll understand when you're a grown up and things, which is what parents say to children that ask too many questions. It's very, very patronising. And she's not having it. And I'm really quite proud of her in this moment, because she's just like, yeah, sure, on one side you've got them enslaving people, crucifying people and murdering people, and then the other side are just vaguely problematic. So she's just like, no, I'm not having this, you're talking nonsense, they're not comparable at all. And she handcuffs him to the oven door, which is fantastic. Absolutely love it for her. And then she's obviously off to get into the mainframe and do whatever it is she wants to do. And then we're cutting back to where Norm is, and Claudia's come to his rescue, so I think these two are probably going to end up going off together on their own, which should be a very interesting one. But they are having to deal with, obviously, the other Vault 31 dwellers and the situation. But Norm is trying to get a message to Lucy or Hank, but there's nobody at the radio in order to hear it. And Lucy's on the move, but she does need a wee bit more practice on the golf cart. She figures out the whole driving thing, but there's obviously not a lot of opportunities
Hoover
to learn
Dam.
that in the vault.
Just thinking about it makes me nervous.
And then we get to the wedding, the big wedding. So Chet is there, and he's finally using his brain, and he's finally, started to question things and stand up for himself. And he's chosen a good moment. I mean, as he says that, he's got lots of witnesses, and you can see that she is trying to stop him. She's squeezing his hands so tightly, and she's giving him that look like she wants to stab him. While he's like, yeah, I found Woody's glasses in her garbage disposal, and I'm worried about this. And she's Canadian, and he pulls out her ID from his pocket and everything. It's really, really good, and I really have to give props to the actress Annabelle O'Hagan, who plays Stephanie Harper, because that switch from rage to panic is so good. You can just see the change in her eyes as she realises that the game's up, and then obviously she runs off and locks herself in her office. Oh, you better go and sober up somewhere then. So yeah, also question is, where did the bridal eye patch come from? That standard issue vault equipment along with the blue ones, was that something they anticipated, that people would lose eyes and then get married? It's quite funny, but I kind of like it. And then when we get to the strip and they're facing down the death claw, and I mean, it's quite on the nose with the music and things, but the fact that it's framed like we're watching a western, and the camera's sitting at hip height, which is obviously where cowboys would normally have their pistols in western movies when they have the showdown at dawn and all the rest of it. But obviously death claws don't use guns, but those claws look pretty lethal, and this is coming from somebody that has handled many an angry cat and bird of prey in my time. And I think Max does a decent job of punching that death claw in the face, but obviously gets stuck in the car with the blade on the glove of the power armour. And the fact that this death claw, so Cooper's obviously right here on the steps of the Lucky 38 with a Gauss rifle, and the fact that death claw takes 2 serious hits to vital areas with such a powerful gun, and it's still coming after him. You can see through its ribs, and it's still standing, and it's a great way of just highlighting how tough these things are. Death claws are, by and large, some of the most dangerous creatures in these games. They have high health, they have armour, they're perceptive, they're fast, they hit hard, they're very dangerous, and I think it's a really good way of showing that, especially for people that are viewing Fallout that haven't played the games and maybe don't quite know. It shows just how tough these things are, but they manage to kill it, and then Max is there to take on the rest of the family, because there's more death claws, there's not just one. And taking on several death claws at once is not for the faint of heart. You know, they have a lot of weapons. They've got their teeth, they've got their claws, they've got their horns, and they also use their tails. So one of the death claws knocks him with its tail, and that's not unrealistic. If you've ever dealt with an iguana, then you maybe know what I'm talking about, because they also bite and claw, but they can use that long tail as a whip, and it is really painful. I can tell you from experience, it's really painful. And they will use it. I mean, iguanas are among the most aggressive herbivores I've ever met. So it kind of makes sense. And chameleons, which the death claws are based on, Jackson's chameleons, they have prehensile tails, so they can use their tail to grip tree branches and things. That's part of their climbing ability. So their tails are very controllable in terms of, you know, that they can wrap it around and they can grab things with their tail, and they can hang on to tree branches and things like that. So it kind of makes sense as well from that point of view that a deathclaw would make use of that tail as another weapon, as another means of defending itself. So, you know, really good to see that. I mean, every bit of a deathclaw is a deadly weapon except their belly. So, you know, take that as however you like. But we end up inside the penthouse, which I think is going to be interesting. So let's go up to the penthouse and see if we can pay a visit. So into the Lucky 38, we've got the Securitrons everywhere. I'm pretty sure Mr. House is dead in this save file. Yeah, so it says on the screen it's like no signal, connection lost, and usually that kind of thing indicates that Mr. House isn't there, or he's dead, or he's powered down. There's also a broken down Securotron here in front of the panel, and I know a lot of people are speculating that this is Yes Man. It's not confirmed, but it certainly could be, and I think that's kind of on purpose, is that it could be Yes Man, because if you choose an independent Vegas, you bring Yes Man here, and he uploads himself into Mr. House's system to replace Mr. House, and then his body, which is a Securotron, is left in front of it. But I think it's on purpose that they're not making any confirmation either way, because obviously once the Securotron's switched off, you don't know whether it's a police one, whether it's Jane, whether it's Yes Man, whether it's Victor, because the screen's blank. So there's no way to know for sure, and I think that's on purpose. They don't want us to have a confirmed ending to Fallout New Vegas because there's 4 different options, but it certainly could be Yes Man. That's a possibility, which would be interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to see Yes Man make an appearance. I think that would be great. One little detail that I really liked is when the ghoul comes and he presses the button that opens whatever's behind this bookshelf where the gold fusion thing goes. There's a Hoover Dam snow globe is sitting on the desk, which is a great little detail. I only spotted that in my second watch, actually, which I really liked, because that's Mr. House's favourite hobby. So again, if you've not played the game, you might not know this, but you can find snow globes of some of the different locations around the Mojave, and Mr. House will pay 2,000 caps each for them. So really easy way of making money, because you'll often find them in places that you would go to anyway, and you can bring them here and he'll give you a lot of money for them. So I like that little detail. And then they frame it like we're expecting that both of Lucy and the ghoul are going to have these doors open and they're going to be looking at each other, but that's not really what happens. And then we are cutting back and forward quite a lot at this point. So we go back to the past where Cooper's given the diode to the president, or at least who we believe is the president. Could be a body double, it could be somebody that has horrible plans to start the Enclave, we don't really know. But he's handing it over, and Diane Welch is in the car as well, and then we cut to Lucy, who finds a disembodied head that's attached to one of the neural interfaces that Mr. House has. If we can see that, I'm not sure actually if we can get down to House's place. We probably can, yeah. Aye, there he is. So it's one of the things that this could be exactly where Hank and Lucy are, because this place goes down for miles and miles. So here's Mr. House. So he's got Oh, he's still alive. I never killed him in this one, but yeah, he's got this thing. So we find her head attached to one of them, and it's Diane Welch's head, which is interesting. So don't really know what that's about. But Mr. House is around in some form or another, so, you know, Cooper powers up the cold fusion, and then we see Justin throw... Oh, Securitrons are all angry at me because I went in there. Oh well. That's fine, we don't care. Yeah. But yeah, we don't really know in what form Mr. House is still around, because if his body has been killed, then it's possible that his brain has been uploaded
Suspended search.
to
Suspended search.
the system in some
Suspended
capacity,
search.
and he's, you know, because it would be just like him to have these kinds of contingency plans in place just in case. So if somebody destroyed his body, he could still live on. You know, copying his brain onto something. Remember that he is an alumnus from TIT, which became the Institute, and, you know, some of the stuff that they were doing there. So who knows? But I guess we're going to find out in the season finale. Left us on a nice cliffhanger, where the girl's going to be having a conversation with Mr. House. So I think that's going to be very, very interesting. And we're serenaded out by Wang Dang Taffy Apple Tango, which is okay, I've made all the Securitrons angry. Oops. The ones outside should be fine. But yeah, which that song lends itself to a quest that you can do for the Atomic Wrangler Casino called Wang Dang Atomic Tango. And then the credits scene, which is always really interesting the way they do it. So we're getting elements from the Canadian border, and somebody's painted the sign that says the Big 51. Yeah, because obviously, you know, Steph, her story clearly is connected to that because she is Canadian, and because the US annexed Canada, it could be that part of what she's trying to do is to sabotage something. I don't really know. There's definitely more to her story, I think, which is going to have a bearing on things going forward. So I've got a lot of questions. But I do love noticing some of the background details, all these little things that you see, like, you know, the snow globe, for example, on the desk in Mr. House's big console. Just a cheeky little nod that, you know, if you spot it in the background, I think it's quite fun. I do really enjoy that. And I'm looking forward to the season finale. Oh, there's the moon as well. That's nice. I say, for a game as old as this one, it still looks pretty good, in my opinion. I think it still looks pretty good for its age. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what happens next. I say, there's obviously we are kind of gearing up for the season finale, and I'm really interested to hear from Mr. House, and see what's actually been going on with him. But I say, with the Securitron in front of the console being Yes Man, I'm not discounting it as a possibility. My first thought was, oh my god, is that Yes Man? But I don't think we're ever going to know that, and I think that's kind of on purpose, that, you know, it's kind of hinting at it, but not explicitly saying, yes, this is Yes Man. That means that we had an independent Vegas ending.
Let me show you
I
the
don't
time
think
of your life.
they don't want to pick an ending and make it clear cut that, you know, of exactly what happened, and a lot of time has passed, so who knows. But yeah, looking forward to the next episode. As always, I do love to hear your thoughts on this. If there's any little details you noticed that I missed, definitely let me know in the comments, and I will catch you guys on Saturday, where we're going to be talking about a wee bit of brain surgery. So hopefully you'll come back for that, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.